All right, let's dig into a question that's so fundamental you've probably never even thought to ask it. Why is it that almost every animal with eyes can see the color blue? So let me ask you this. What could you possibly have in common with a tiny honeybee buzzing around a flower and a massive humpback whale cruising through the deep ocean? Believe it or not, the answer is you can all see blue. But that just opens up a much bigger question. Why that color? Why is the ability to see blue so incredibly universal across the entire animal kingdom? Well, it turns out the answer is a fascinating mix of physics, deep evolution, and just plain survival. Okay, so to start, we have to look at the environment itself, because as it turns out, our world is literally painted blue. It all begins with a physical principle called Rayleigh scattering. Now, you know sunlight contains all the colors of the rainbow, right? But here's the thing. Not all of those colors travel the same way. What Rayleigh scattering basically means is that shorter wavelengths of light, and blue has a very short wavelength, get bounced around and scattered way more easily by all the tiny particles in our atmosphere, especially compared to longer wavelengths, like red. And this scattering has a couple of really obvious results that, you see every single day. First, it's why our sky is blue. That blue light is just getting scattered in every possible direction. And second, it's why distant mountains or even shadows tend to have a bluish tint to them. That's just the scattered blue light filling in all the visual gaps. So here's the crucial takeaway from all that physics. Blue isn't just some random color that shows up here and there. Nope. It is a constant, stable, and incredibly reliable signal in just about any environment you can find on land. It's the background canvas for everything. And if you think that's interesting, this effect gets even more intense in water. In the air, blue light is scattered all over, but in the water, it's a different story. Water molecules are great at absorbing those longer wavelengths, the reds, the oranges, the yellows. They get soaked up really close to the surface, but blue light, it has enough energy to punch deep, deep down, which makes it the dominant and sometimes only color in aquatic environments. So you've got this world that's just swimming in blue light, which sets the stage perfectly for the next piece of our puzzle, evolution. Because if the world is full of blue, it makes a whole lot of sense that life would adapt to see it. And as it turns out, seeing blue was kind of an evolutionary shortcut. Now, to see any color at all, you need these special light-sensitive proteins in your eyes called opsins. You can think of them like tiny little antennas in your retina. Each type of opsin is tuned to pick up a very specific wavelength or color of light. They are the absolute bedrock of color vision. And when we look way back at the evolutionary history of vision, we see this incredibly clear pattern. First, life evolved basic light detection, just, telling the difference between light and dark. But right after that, the very first color-sensitive opsin to show up was one specialized for short wavelength light. That's right, the first color channel to ever exist was for blue, or maybe even ultraviolet light. The ability to see greens and reds, that came much, much later, and only in certain branches of the animal family tree. This is so important to let sink in. Seeing blue isn't some new, fancy trick. It is one of the oldest, most basic, and most foundational color channels in the entire history of life on this planet. So we've got a world drenched in blue light and eyes that evolved to see it first. But why did that trait stick around so successfully? Well, it all comes down to survival. The ability to see blue is like having a life-saving toolkit. And this toolkit gives you some key advantages. For starters, just being able to tell the difference between the blue sky and the green or brown ground is pretty fundamental for navigation. The quality and amount of blue light also help animals judge the time of day, and even changes in the weather, which is critical for their internal clocks. It helps them spot vital things like water sources from a distance. And for a lot of species, like birds or fish, that blue color is actually used as a powerful signal for communicating with each other, especially for finding a mate. But, and this is a really crucial distinction we have to make, just because almost every animal can perceive blue light, it doesn't mean they all experience the color blue in the same way we do. There's a whole spectrum of sight out there. Take us, for example. Humans have 3 types of color receptors, for red, green, and blue. That gives us what's called trichromatic vision. A dog, on the other hand, only has 2 types, for blue and a kind of yellowish green, so they live in a dichromatic world. Birds are even more advanced than us. Many have 4 receptors, adding ultraviolet light to the mix. And then you have a deep-sea fish living where only blue light can even reach, and they often have just one single receptor tuned perfectly to blue. For them, the world is monochromatic. So, this is really the key takeaway for this part. The universal ability to sense blue light does not mean a universal experience of the color blue. The world looks profoundly different depending on the eye that's doing the looking. Okay, it's time. Let's put all of these pieces together and get to the final answer. So, why can we all see blue? It really boils down to this perfect storm of physics and biology. First, our planet is just drenched in blue light, from the sky above us to the deep oceans below. It's everywhere. And because that blue signal was so constant and so reliable, it became the very first color that life evolved the machinery to see. It's basically the oldest color in our collective visual library, and that makes it the one thing a bee, a whale, and you all share. It's really this beautiful intersection of physics shaping biology. Blue is everywhere, so we evolved to see it. And that leaves us with one last really fascinating thought to chew on. If our world were different, if we lived under, say, a purple sky or swam in green seas, what universal color do you think we might all be seeing instead?